everybody. Welcome to Norm's Rare Guitars podcast. It's coming to you as a podcast, and like a week later, we're going to delay it and show it on the All Guitar Network. And I've got one of my very favorite guitar players in the world, Mr. Josh Smith. And he's a master of all styles, blues, R&B, bebop, everything. We'll talk, and he's one of my good friends, and I just want to just tell you that my buddy Joe Bonamassa says there's one guitar player that terrifies me, and that is Josh Smith. He says Josh can play anything, and he scares the hell out of me. So thank you, Josh, for doing this, buddy.
Thank you, Norm. Happy to be here,
All
my
right.
friend.
So you were just traveling. Where did you just come from?
I just got back from Italy and Scandinavia. So little
Very
Europe,
nice.
little Scandinavia, yeah.
Were you doing like festivals? Or?
I did a festival in Italy and a festival in Sweden and some gigs in Norway and a clinic and a couple random things. And that's the way it goes for me these days. A lot of flying by myself, playing with pickup bands, doing a gig, a clinic, all sorts of whatever I can, you know.
But you got some good players over there that you used to working with and all that. Right?
In Scandinavia, yeah, I have some guys there that I've played with for years when I go over. But in other countries lately, it's a crapshoot sometimes, you know. But that's the only way I can do it and come home with money in my pocket.
There you go. Well, tell them to just play simple and, you know, just stay
Exactly.
out of your way because
Yeah, exactly.
you're the guy.
It's an interesting thing always playing with different guys all the time. Sometimes in the course of a week, I'll play with 2-3 different rhythm sections. It's always a challenge.
Well, I'll tell you, he can make anybody sound good, and he's one of the greats of all times. Tell everybody how they can get some of your stuff, you know, on the social media and all that.
Well, I mean, the main thing would be joshsmithguitar.com or, you know, so from there you can get to my Instagram, my Twitter, my Facebook, to my merch store and all my records and all that type of stuff. You know.
Well, you want to support great players, and this is a guy that you want to buy his CDs, DVDs,
Yeah.
hats, shirts, anything
Whatever
you do to
I
keep
got it
guys
all.
like this going. Absolutely. He's a business man.
At least trying to be better about that side of the business these days.
There you
yeah.
go. Well, it is a business, but I'll tell you, it's an art, and you are an amazing artist.
Thanks, Norm.
And great singer and great guitar player. I had the pleasure of actually going in the studio with you.
That's right.
Josh has a great home studio,
Yeah.
and you have a lot of people that fly in from all over the world to record with you, right?
I do. It's more and more every year. Sometimes it's difficult balancing the schedule because I'm touring so much. But last year I produced 4 records other than my own back there, and this year I've already produced 2, and I have other ones on the schedule. And yeah, so between doing my own stuff back there and producing for other artists, it's gotten very busy. And also, I've put honestly quite a bit of time and effort into the studio to where it's really awesome now. It's dialed in,
I
and it's
can
really great.
vouch for that. It sounds great.
Dude,
so,
it's even better than it was when you were
yeah.
there. I mean,
Well, you know what really helps? Having a guy like you behind the board so you can listen and get the good tones and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
know
well,
how to dial it in.
that's been interesting because a lot of the records I've produced so far have been guitar players. So it's guys who are fans of mine or wanted, you know, my advice on those types of things. So that's easy. It's in my wheelhouse. But lately I've been starting to produce stuff outside of my wheelhouse, which has really been enjoyable and helped me become a better producer, better engineer. And I'm really enjoying that part of doing this stuff these days.
Well, you know, he's such a great musician. When I first met you, you were playing with Raphael Sadiq, right?
Sure, yeah.
And that was some really cool stuff. And
Yeah, Raphael's amazing,
yeah, and I mean, Josh is like a master at R&B, all styles R&B,
Yeah.
and
Well, I don't
blues.
agree with it, yeah.
I'm going to say it. You know, Josh is turning red here because I'm complimenting him, and you know he sometimes you know gets humble, but you don't need to be humbled by the way you play.
You know, it's funny. You know, I grew up listening to just American music, all music. So I tried to always listen with an open mind to anything and find something that I can enjoy. Now, I always gravitated towards blues and soul and R&B and jazz and country and things. You know, the great American musical forms that, you know, the reason we're so great at music. I mean, this is our tradition and our history.
Absolutely, yeah.
you know?
And you grew up in Florida. And,
I grew up where
and I
you
grew up
did.
there. I was
Yeah.
like a generation or so before you. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
old guys. But who did you play with down there, and how did you get out here?
Well, I started as a kid going to blues jams and stuff, and I started playing guitar at 6. So by the time I was 13, I was pretty good, and I was frustrated by the fact that kids my age, if they were good enough to play, with me, like if they had also played as long as I had, they weren't into the music I liked, because I was already into
Old school
Albert King and Otis Rush and Motown and Stax and stuff. And at that time, it was all transitioning from heavy metal to like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so I couldn't find kids that were into what I was into. So it became, okay, now I need to go find adults to play with.
old guys.
Yeah, basically. So I lucked into going to these jams, and from one of the jams, some of the old guys kind of saw the audience go crazy for this little kid playing guitar, because it was a novelty, and they thought, well, man, if we bring this little kid to more gigs, maybe we'll book more gigs and get better pay. And that's kind of how it started. They started having me come to all their gigs, and then it became, instead of their band, it was my name on the front,
Right.
and next thing I knew, I was gigging all the time, and it was like, well, let's make a record. So I wrote songs. You're talking, I'm 13 years old, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
And you've played with some great jazz artists too, right?
Well, I mean, I don't consider myself a jazz guy. I've
Yeah, but
been
you play the hell
fortunate
out
to
of
play
jazz.
with some good jazz artists as friends, but I've never been a full-time jazz guy or on the road touring playing jazz. Or
But
anything like that.
don't you have a record that's
I do, yeah.
with my Archtop Super 400?
Super
that you
400
use?
that's available next door in the shop. Yes, I did a record called Still 2 years ago. That was my first like jazz record, and I borrowed that Super 400 to play on most of the album.
Well, amazingly tasteful player. And Josh is also on the Joe Bonamassa Blues Cruises a lot. I've been on
Yeah.
several of them, and you were on. I know you're good buddies with Joe.
Yeah, Joe's just such a great guy. We have such a common upbringing that we share.
He was the young kid playing with the old guys, too.
Yeah, there's a lot that we have in common as far as the way we were raised and the things we care about and love and are serious about. He's also, in some ways, we're alike because we're very just serious about music, He's not really a drinker or he doesn't
Right.
smoke. It's all just, he loves music, and we can relate to each other on that. I'm the same way, and we've been doing this so long that we have a lot of shared experiences. Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that you did previously with Kirk Fletcher, who's a good
Well,
friend.
Kirk is my best friend, When I moved to L.A., I met Kirk shortly after that, and I would say it was the first time I'd ever met anybody so much like me as far as
He
the
was
things
another
he was
young guy,
into.
too, that was kind of interested
Well,
in
I
all
knew
that
other
stuff.
young guys. I grew up knowing Derek Trucks, and we played together all the time, and I knew many of these other young guys at that time, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Johnny Lang. I knew all these guys because we were all on the
Right.
circuit. But Kirk, I just mean, when we met, it felt like, we had literally grown up listening to the exact same records at the same time, wanting to do the same thing. I'd say something and he could like finish my sentence,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was like finding a brother.
Yeah, one of the great guys, and just really nice people. I mean, Josh and Kirk and Joe and Kenny Wayne and all these guys, what's kind of cool is that, it's not like the old days with these rock stars and stuff that had attitudes sometimes and all that.
Yeah,
These
sure.
are like, regular down-to-earth guys that are approachable. And, if you see these guys playing, you can come up to them and talk to them. And they're happy to share, too, some of their tips as far as playing and all that.
Oh, yeah.
You even have a thing on the All Guitar Network where you got some shows, and you have a few other things.
Yeah, I have many instructional stuff, like on True Fire. That's been
Right.
really, really beneficial for me financially and also for helping to build my exposure, because, All Guitar Network and True Fire has an enormous audience. So I have all of a sudden all these new fans who end up buying my lesson package and learning, and then they buy my records, because maybe they didn't know me.
It's great that you can kind of go on the internet and find these kind of things, and gives a lot of young people a head start.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's an amazing thing about music today and all these players. Guys have so much information available to them that they're able to just grow at light speed compared to the way, I mean, I know the way it was for you when you were learning to play. You had vinyl,
Right, and I had to go to, like, in Miami, there was an area called Liberty City, and I would love the R&B and blues stuff, so I had to go to, like, this area that was, out of where I lived to try to find the people that I was looking for. I mean,
Yeah.
there were some R&B and blues stations there back in the day, but you had to go search for it. Now it's at your fingertips.
Even to get those records. Like if you got told about Otis Rush or something and it was 1962 or whatever, it might take you months to get an Otis Rush record or something like that. Whereas now if I tell a kid you should go listen to Otis Rush, he can have his entire
10 seconds
discography
later,
in
he's
10
there.
seconds. You know, or if I tell a kid you should learn how to play melodic minor scale, he can have 10 million videos of people showing him how to do it like that. Whereas I had to like go find some way to figure this out, ask somebody, buy a book. You know, there wasn't any of that. So it's interesting. Guys are coming so much further quicker, but I'm also seeing like certain little steps that are just even getting completely ignored. They don't exist anymore. Like playing gigs nonstop for 4 hours a night doing covers and
4,
things
5,
like that.
6 sets a night. I remember in Miami, there was a place called the 3 o'clock club or the 5 o'clock. I don't remember what it was, but it was 6 45-minute sets.
Oh, yeah.
Man, by the end of the night, you were like soaking wet. You come out, and it was just, you never had enough tunes, so you had to repeat tunes.
But it's where that's how you learn to be a professional. You learn how to build up stamina to cover a gig all night. If you're a soloist, how to solo all night and not just repeat yourself, to keep it interesting. How to, be a professional. And there's not enough gigs anymore, and guys are becoming so good, but they're skipping that step. When I was
it's
13,
like they have a showcase or something with one set.
exactly.
It's not
when I
the
was
same.
13, I would play every Friday night. From between 13 and 15, I played every Friday night at a place called Cheers in Fort Lauderdale, which they have 4 a.m. liquor licenses there. And I would play 4 sets a night from 9:45 till 3:45 in the morning. This is as a 13-year-old, where I'd be soloing all night. And that's what helped me start to build the vocabulary that now people ask me, where did all this vocabulary come from? Well, it came because I was forced to solo for hours on end every
didn't want to
night.
repeat yourself.
Exactly.
So, I mean, when I grew up there, that was the days of, I played with a guy named Bobby Caldwell, and we were kind of R&B, and we played a lot of stuff. I was very good friends with Jaco Pastorius. He was coming up at the time. There were people like Ira Sullivan down there.
He's still there.
Yeah. There was, my favorite was this guy, Little Beaver, which actually you cut a couple of Little Beaver tunes for me, and I really appreciate you doing that. You killed it.
Little Beaver, one of the all-time most underrated musicians.
Absolutely. Great singer, great guitar player, and it was sort of like blues, but with maybe a little chord change or something that was just a little more interesting than just 3-chord. It wasn't done just to throw something in. It made a lot of sense musically.
Absolutely.
But it was just made your ears kind of perk up because it was just something that you wouldn't normally hear, in traditional blues stuff.
Yep.
And so who are some of your other favorite artists that you...
Well, definitely growing up, it started with Albert King and B.B. King. They were most important to me. I was, my dad had a big vinyl collection, so there'd be music on all the time. We'd be watching sports and listening to music. So the Yankee game would be on TV, and music would be playing. So it could be Rolling Stones or Allman Brothers, or it could be Miles Davis, or it could be B.B. King. So I was hearing all this good music, and B.B. was the first thing that grabbed me, and then Albert King. And then around that, you're talking the 90s, so then Stevie Ray passed away, and I never got a chance to see him. I was 10 when he passed away.
Really?
So I didn't even really know Stevie. I knew who he was, but when he passed away, that's when I got interested, because his name it was all over the news, and I wanted to delve in more to this. And it was a game changer finding Stevie Ray as a kid, because it was like
high energy.
It was it was. I could see. I got a bootleg tape, and seeing him sweat like that and play so much passion, it was like, I want to do that, And he was a gateway then to a lot of other blues that I hadn't quite found yet. Like Otis Rush and things like that. And
I loved B.B. and Albert as well, and I've become even more infatuated with Freddie these days, because what a great singer,
he was a
great player.
singer.
And that that show that's on TV called The Beat, it's on the internet that you can get from 1965, 66.
Yeah.
I know we talked about that a lot, there's a lot of just great performances.
Yeah, I have the whole series on DVD.
Yeah. And Freddie was he was a local there. So, I mean, he was on a lot of different episodes. Yeah. So, and his singing kills me. And there was a lot more to his stuff, too, than just 3-chord blues.
What's really interesting about the history of those guitar slinger frontman guys is seeing, how it filtered out across the country to me. That's really fascinating to me. Like seeing, first switching from acoustic to electric and seeing T-Bone Walker and Lonnie Johnson kind of start this thing, and B.B. King hear those guys and do something. And then B.B. truly was like a revolution. Like without B.B. King, Albert King would not exist, or Freddie King would not exist.
Well, and he introduced the white audience actually to.
Well, but not even that to the black audience. He was like they heard B.B. King. Albert King heard B.B. King and knew he could do that. Same with Freddie King. Bobby Bland. If you listen to the early Bobby Bland records, he's trying to sing exactly like B.B. King before he found his voice. Otis Rush especially. The first record is a B.B. King copy record almost.
One of my favorite artists is Little Milton, Little Milton Campbell. Yeah. And he kind of, when I listen, his voice sounds a lot like Bobby Bland, when you think about it.
Absolutely.
If you listen to him.
Well, he was, he's a few years removed from those guys, and it's like, he was hearing what Bobby Bland did with with BB's thing, but Little Milton also has like some of that Solomon Burke stuff going on, and the R&B.
And there was there was a lot of stuff that was different forms that he played. That he was playing blues over R&B.
Oh yeah, like Grits Ain't Groceries and things like that.
That was one of my favorites, and If Waltz Could Talk and different things like that.
So Tyrone Davis type
another
stuff,
one,
all that stuff. Yeah, those guys started to kind of mix in the soul with the blues. They were blues guys at heart, absolutely.
Right.
And
on our thing on All Guitar Network, Josh does stuff like, he's got a few different episodes where some is just straight blues, some of it's R&B, how to play over a shuffle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a short break and we're going to come back with Josh in just one sec. Josh, can you take us out with something that's a little more Curtis Mayfield-y type?
Curtis Mayfield-y? Sure.
All right, we'll be right back. Here with Josh Smith, one of the greatest guitar players of all time. I'm telling you, for my money, don't get any better than this guy right here.
That's incredibly
kind. And I've heard so many great guitar players in my life.
I know you have.
And I'm saying it in truthfulness. I mean, I really believe that he is one of the most incredible, authentic, and original guitar players.
Thanks, man.
In all styles.
It's funny, when you decide you're going to dedicate your life to something, there's got to be a reason for it, right? And all I've ever wanted is to just be the best guitar player I could be. That's been the most important thing, It's like I've dedicated my life to that. I love this thing so much.
I know. We talk guitars and we kind of go crazy over different stuff. Josh is playing a 175 right now, but he plays, Tellys and Les Pauls and 175s and L5s and acoustic stuff, and all of it.
Because it's such a fascinating instrument, and everything has its place. I'm fascinated by why did this guy use this for this? Why does this sound right for this? Why these things sound a certain way? It's all so fascinating to me.
Yeah. Every guitar has got its own voice and personality and all that. And when you have somebody like you playing it, you can bring out all those things.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously you're influenced by the history of stuff. So it's like you see a telly and you think of certain things no matter what. So it's like you're thinking about country or you're thinking about R&B, Steve Cropper and Cornell Dupree or whatever. You see a Strat, you're thinking about Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Curtis Mayfield, and I see a guitar like this, I'm thinking about certain things, it's just automatic.
Just pulls it out of you.
Yeah.
And, and Josh is a family man. His beautiful wife, Nikki's in here watching this. And his son is a TV star. Can I talk about that? Or is that,
Well, I don't like to talk about it that much, but yeah, he's a very talented young man, and he's been on a bunch of
nice kid,
TV
very
stuff.
bright.
He's a special, everybody thinks their kid can do no wrong, and my kid's special. Well, I'm right.
Well, you
He's
guys did a
special.
good job. Yeah, he is a really good kid.
Yeah.
And so tell us, like, what's it like having to go out on the road? I mean, this is what you have to do to support a family. You got to go out,
Yeah.
take those gigs, and, you know.
Well, it's, that's the hardest part of this is figuring out your lane to be able to do this for life. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because it's a major sacrifice and a commitment, and it's full of a tremendous amount of ups and downs. Without Nikki, I would never have been able to reach even the small level I'm at right now, because we moved here with no idea what we were going to do, and the job she got basically supported us for 15 years,
Well, good for you. You
and-
got a good one?
Well, yeah. I mean, because there's no way for me to know, especially when I was more working as a sideman, I couldn't guarantee that I'd make any money every year. So now some years I'd do all right and some years I wouldn't. But it was so cyclical and up and down that without the stability of my wife doing the same her thing, I wouldn't have been able to do my thing to help to almost have it pay off now, where it's at least a stable money that happens from me doing my thing.
I mean, a lot of people know about you, and if anybody doesn't, they should, because you're something else.
Well, that's a difficult thing, this is such a hard business. When I was doing all sideman stuff and session stuff, I mean, that's the reason I moved to LA, was to not do my thing, was to do sessions, to do sideman work. And that worked, but like I said, it was so up and down, and somehow it has naturally swung back to what I'm doing again now, which is my thing. But it's so much more difficult to make your thing pay off.
I understand. Well, I've been married for 50 years, and, you always want to make your wife proud. I say a lot of dumb stuff that she goes, what the hell do you say that for? And I do it all the time. So, and she tries to keep me in line, and, but, you do what you have to, for your family. They knew what they were getting into when they married you, and
She did know that. There's part of that to it for sure,
Yeah.
But you never, even though like someone, when you got married, she didn't know you were going to become the world's greatest guitar dealer in the history of guitar. You know what I mean?
I can't hear you. What did you say?
You know what I'm saying.
I
mean, she thought you were going to be a musician, right?
She did. That's what I came out here to do. But the guitar thing, I did it on the side because I could take a nice guitar and I could walk in and show somebody a great guitar and say, this is a great guitar. I knew what sucked about my music, and I couldn't walk into the record companies and go, this is great, and hand them wasn't even a CD back then. It would be a tape, and I kind of would say it and then duck because I knew kind of what I didn't like about it.
Sure.
And, back in those days, you didn't have all the stuff that you can do with correcting pitch and tempo and all the kind of things. Some of the best things I've ever done never made it to tape because there was some kind of disaster that went on afterwards, and we had to ditch it and do it again. And after about 7 takes or 10 takes or 20 takes, all the life got taken out of it.
That does happen. It makes you appreciate the tremendous greatness of all these records
Old
and
guys,
great
the old
artists
guys,
that we grew up listening to.
Absolutely. And now vinyl is the big thing again,
Well, it's the only market where it's actually growing every year.
Yeah.
It's we're talking small numbers and percentages, but for the last 5-6 years, it's grown every year how much vinyl gets sold.
Well, it died for a minute and then came back. So, I never really took good care of my records. So, when I would try to go to cut number 4 or 5, it was like, so my records a lot of time were sort of unlistenable, but I still listened to them. And a lot of stuff that I remembered when I was a kid, some of the tunes, some of the local things out of Miami, R&B and stuff, I thought I would never be able to get those records again, and you can find them on the internet.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. Every now and then there'll be something pop in my head from some old thing, and it's not, I can't find it, and it flabbergasts me because it's like you can find everything now.
I know, it's amazing.
Everything.
Somebody's got a copy of it and they put it out there,
Yep.
and all these old artists I never thought I'd ever be able to hear certain tunes again, and I would put in like Frank Williams and the Rocketeers. I Feel My Love Coming Down, one of my favorite tunes, and it was it wasn't a big hit. It was a local thing, but it was just fantastic. It was Little Beaver playing guitar and singing.
Yeah.
One of the great tunes. I don't know if you've heard that one, but this
I'm
is
sure I have, but I
man,
don't know,
it's unbelievable. Anyhow, I figured, well, I'll never hear that again, and it came to my mind, and I asked Jen, who works with me. I said, hey, can you look this up? Immediately pops right up. So it's amazing.
Well, it is. I mean, it's part of the world we're dealing with right now. The digital world. It's a blessing and a curse for musicians.
Well, whatever you say or whatever you do, if you put it down and it's out there, it stays out there. So be
it's
careful
funny.
what you do and what you say.
That's exactly it. I've gotten into this conversation with Kirk and Joe and Matt Schofield and other friends, Eric Gales, about now literally every note I play in a year is available. Yep. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't have an off night. So some of my friends were like, I don't want people videoing every show. I'll take it down off YouTube. And I kind of go the other way. It's like if you don't want it to show up, then you better not suck.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right.
You kind of have to
better be
prepared every night, every minute. But it takes it out of you sometimes a little bit because you're like, I've had, we all have. I had nights where I go, I didn't like that. And, of course, that entire thing is up on YouTube by the end of the night. You know what I mean? And it's like somehow the one that I hated the most will be the one that gets shared, and all of a sudden it has 1 million views, and it's like
And sometimes,
great,
I mean, you probably agree with this, but I mean, I remember when I used to play, some of the nights where I was embarrassed, people would come up and say, that was great.
Absolutely.
And some of the nights where I thought I played great, it was like, kind of lukewarm. So
there's no accounting for what people, they're hearing it different than you are. You know what I mean? I have a standard that I'm trying to achieve that's ingrained in my head, and I know whether I hit it or not. But it doesn't mean that they didn't enjoy the show equally on it as a night that I thought I was killing.
On a night that you're 60%, you're like 100% better than everybody else.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's been a thing to figure out. I used to be pretty obsessed with being as perfect as I could be on a gig. Which is not a good thing to do. It's like, but it used to drive me. Like if I would hear a recording from a gig and you're talking 2 hours of playing, I'd have one mistake. It would drive me crazy, and I've let that go a long time ago. Like you can't hold on to that stuff.
And you know what? I think people appreciate when it is real. And if there is kind of something that's not absolutely perfect. I mean, we've been doing like these videos and Norm's Rare Guitars for years, and kind of the more we screw up sometimes, people like it because they know that it's not retouched up and that we're not, trying to go for perfection. We're just going for a feel and for fun and, buddies talking and that kind of thing, So, it's amazing that, with everything being so perfected now, and sanitized, it takes a lot of the feel out of a lot of stuff. So
it certainly can. I mean, it's an age where you have unlimited opportunity to perfect things.
All you need to do is play the chorus one time right, and then you can just loop it.
Well, that's the great thing about the way that these guys made records that we were talking about is they had to commit to everything. And if they got it close enough, it was like, well, that's it,
Some of my favorite old records, some of it's a little out of tune.
Absolutely, but you made decisions on the fly. You did it, and you're like, okay, that's good. I can deal with that. Let's build on that, or whatever. You just quickly made decisions. Now you can get into this where you vacillate over every decision because you can. You have unlimited time and options, and so it's like. It can be great for creativity, but it can also hurt you because you'll never finish the project. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, you can't be too critical. And when you play, man, it's so good that, I don't think anybody would disagree with me that you were one of the great players. Tell me, like, what's going on right now? What are you doing? What are you promoting? Where are you touring?
Well, I'm mostly, I've been touring like crazy the last 18 months.
I know that. Every time I call you, well, Josh is out of town.
Yeah, but I'm home now a lot of the back half of this year. I have a few more things to produce in my studio for other artists. I'm finishing up a woman's record right now. We're mixing. I'm finishing my live album, Blu-ray video that will be coming out later this year. I'm really excited about that. I've never done a live record. People have been asking for it forever, and I videoed the whole thing in 4K. It looks incredible. I'm hoping to promote it properly because I feel like people are going to like it. We really, really, really went for it that night, and it's good. And I hope.
And you caught the right night.
We did. Well, we did 2 nights at the Baked Potato, and I'm glad we did 2 nights because even after all this, I was tight the first night. We all were. I felt like we were tight. We were noticing the cameras and knew we were recording, and it was a long day. We were in there early setting up and getting sound and all that, and then you got to play the gig, and it was like, not that we played bad, but I looked back at the first night and it was like, that's okay. I hope we're better the second night. And then we were. We were very relaxed. And so it's 98% second night on this.
I remember back in the old days, the first thing that the recording engineer would do is try to get the drum sound.
Sure.
And sometimes that would take 4 hours of hitting a tom-tom going boom.
Yeah. And
then putting a little tape on it and going boom. And by the time you started playing the tune, you were already half asleep,
Absolutely,
that kind of thing,
Man,
so
it's such a,
having a studio in your house is great because if you wake up at 3 a.m.
with an idea, you can go do it. But again, it's that unlimited amount of choices, Yeah. But it is, I do sometimes also long for the other way. Like imagine, I was watching a documentary about Fleetwood Mac making Tusk, the record After Rumors.
I remember that.
And they spent a year on this record,
I supplied some instruments.
I'm sure
to
you
Lindsay
did.
And,
But like the thought of doing nothing but being creative for a year and having the budget, like this isn't sitting in your home studio. This is going to Ocean Way, and which is now East West or whatever,
right.
And going and having unlimited, can we get timpanis in here by 2:00? You know what I mean?
Well, they had a marching band and part of that.
Exactly. Let's go to Dodger Stadium and record a marching band.
Go.
You know what I mean?
Well, it was a good thing that they were of the caliber and it sold as many records as they could because, that budget for that record must have been just ridiculous.
No, but there is something to be said for sometimes genius comes out of the ability to suck. Like to just try it until you find it, because you may have a terrible idea, but it may lead to a great idea.
Right.
I watched the Jimmy Iovine documentary about making Damn the Torpedoes with Tom, and they worked on that drum sound for months. You know what I mean? But they made a great fucking record, a magical record.
What did you say, by the way?
What?
Repeat that last line that you just. They made
a great fucking record.
Okay, we don't really like to talk like that here on this show.
Sorry, Norm.
This is PG, so if you want to say anything fucking bad, just don't say that anymore.
I apologize. I've been good. That was the first one I dropped.
I know. Well, I don't really give a fuck, but it's okay. So, but I'm so thankful to my buddy Josh, and on top of being a great musician and loving the fact that I've known and so many great musicians, I consider Josh a really great friend, and he's a great person and a great young man. And, he's got a lot of career ahead of him, producing, playing, singing, writing, all this stuff. And if you want to go into a great studio,
hit me up.
Go to Josh's studio. If you want to support the arts, take care of Josh and buy some of his CDs, his records, his shirts, his hats.
Yeah. And if you need a guitar, buy it from Norm.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So we're at the Norm's Rare Guitars podcast. I can't thank Josh enough, and I hope if you're going to be in town, maybe I know we've got my buddy Bruce Foreman that's going to come in maybe next week. I'd love it if you'd be my
in the world.
I'd like you to be my sidekick from time to time if you have the time.
If I'm here,
it's a pleasure because it's like a couple of friends and buddies just sitting around talking, and I think we're on the same wavelength a lot of the time. I can't play like he can, but we think alike and like a lot of the same music.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you can see this on the All Guitar Network. That's going to be the video of this, and you can listen to it on our podcast, the Norm's Rare Guitars podcast. I thank you guys for listening and watching this thing, and I'm grateful and humbled, and I'm so grateful to people like Josh Smith, who's willing to come in here and give his time, and his wife Nikki for putting up with me and all that kind of stuff. Thank you guys.
Anytime, Norm. You know that. Anything for you, I also consider you a true friend.
He is family, and again, do whatever you can to support this guy, because this is real music. This guy can play like nobody's business. And if you ever want to find out what anybody thinks, go ask Joe Bonamassa what he thinks of Josh Smith, because and it's unanimous with a lot of people. So and we'll see you on the Joe Bonamassa Blues Cruises and
back.
all that kind of stuff
February.
In Europe. Kirk Fletcher, also our buddy, and also Eric Gales. You brought him up a little while ago.
Eric is killing it right now.
Oh, man, he is like
And get his
something
new
else.
record. I wrote a song on there for him on his new record, so buy
There
it.
you go. That's another one who started out as a young guy who was like one of the young.
It's funny getting to be
guns.
friendly with Eric. I can tell him, Kirk and I can both make him laugh because he's a few years older than Kirk and I and Joe. And Eric was signed on Arista Records, I think, when he was 15.
Right.
And there were stories about him in Guitar Player, so I saw him. And here I am, 12 probably, seeing this kid. He had a Stevie Ray Strat at the time.
Yep.
And he played upside down, and it was, this is the next Jimi Hendrix, the next big guy. So I immediately bought that record when it was released. And he was on our Arsenio Hall show, and I wore that record out
He's
because I thought,
badass.
this is someone my age, who's doing it. Like, I got to do that,
And Cody Wright, who was playing with him for a while too. When I
Yeah.
first saw that, I grew up with Jocko. I was kind of knocked out by Cody.
Yeah.
On the cruise, the last time everybody was talking about Chris Kane. There's
Well,
another guy.
Chris is a legend that not enough people know about.
Absolutely.
I first saw Chris when I was 12 years old. He came to tour, and he played in Delray Beach, Florida, at a place called The Back Room. He had his overalls on, and he came out and started singing like B.B. King and playing like B.B. King and Albert King, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
And then he plays a piano like
He
Ray
plays
Charles,
piano like
and
Ray
he
Charles.
plays
He
sax.
he plays jazz very well. He's just an incredibly deep musician and kind guy.
And he's funnier than hell too.
Yeah, he could be a
he's
comedian,
like
yeah.
one of these guys who, it's just like a great hang when you're hanging around with him.
This is a guy that deserves way more
Oh, yeah.
attention than he has.
Absolutely. And I hope you guys listen to these names and support these people, because they're all fantastic, and we want to keep it all alive.
Yep.
So keeping the blues alive, like Joe Bonamassa says.
Yep.
Thank you guys for listening. The great Josh Smith,
Thank
thank you. And I really appreciate the time.
Yep.
See you next time.
All right.
Take us out, Josh.
All right.